Farage on the path to power, or is he having his Neil Kinnock moment? Today, the Reform leader announced his so-called shadow cabinet, with Richard Tyson Business, Robert Jenrick as shadow chancellor, and Zia Youssef covering home affairs. But where is the Foreign Secretary, Defence Secretary, or Agriculture Secretary? Some are saying this is Nigel Farage getting serious about being a party of government, but is he making the same mistake as Lord Kinnock, announcing the government before winning an election? And
this moment on America's decline is over.
Is Donald Trump's crusade against DEI coming to fruition? Goldman Sachs is reportedly ending its diversity policies for appointments to its board. Is this a sign that Trump's agenda is forcing companies back into common sense? Or are they realizing that appointing on anything other than merit is nonsensical and counterproductive? Also, is 56 too old for fashion? Just look at me. According to a new survey, in my case it always was, but in other cases it might be. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog at gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you. The top stories. The UK's unemployment rate has climbed to a near five-year high, rising to 5.2% in the final 3 months of 2025. The Office for National Statistics says the increase reflects weak hiring and more people actively looking for work, with the rate edging up from 5.1% the previous quarter, higher than economists had expected. Wage growth also slowed, with regular pay rising 4.2% annually, while redundancies are trending upwards. Officials say the number of job seekers per vacancy has now reached a new post-pandemic high. Nigel Farage has unveiled his new top team, a group he's calling a shadow cabinet. Richard Tice has been confirmed as deputy leader, with Farage saying he would be deputy prime minister if Reform wins power, and he'll also take on the business, trade and energy brief. Former Tory minister Robert Jenrick becomes the party's economic spokesperson, blaming what he calls decades of mismanagement for Britain's economic problems. Reform also announced Mr Jenrick as the party's pick to become chancellor if it wins power at the next general election. Businessman Zia Youssef takes the Home Affairs role, focusing heavily on immigration. And Suella Braverman will lead on education, skills and equality. Councils are facing what organisers are calling a race against time to prepare for local elections after the government reversed its decision to delay dozens of votes. Elections will now go ahead in around 30 council areas on the 7th of May after ministers abandoned plans to postpone them following legal advice. The body representing election administrators says staff have lost months of planning time and now face an uphill struggle to get everything ready. The government says £63 million will be made available to help councils manage the changes, but critics say the last-minute U-turn has created confusion and pressure on local authorities. A cold health alert has been issued across much of England as forecasters predict snow could hit parts of Wales and the Midlands. The alert from the UK Health Security Agency runs from 6 a.m. on Friday until 8 a.m. on Monday and covers the South West, the Midlands, the North East, the North West and Yorkshire and the Humber. The agency said the cold weather was likely to pose a greater risk to life of vulnerable people and prompt an increased use of healthcare services. And tributes have been pouring in for the late civil rights leader Jesse Jackson, who's died at the age of 84. Donald Trump described him as a force of nature and the man with lots of personality, grit and street smarts. Former Vice President Kamala Harris describes him as one of America's greatest patriots. His family says he passed away peacefully this morning, surrounded by loved ones. Jackson was a towering figure in the fight for racial equality, working alongside Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Those are the latest headlines from me for now. Back to Jacob.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, welcome back to State of the Nation. What is happening to the economy? If you were to listen to the leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, you'd think everything was going marvellously. Just listen to him.
Since we've been in government, we've created 380,000 jobs, the employment rate is up and inactivity is down, the complete opposite of what we inherited.
Well, what was it Disraeli said about lies, damned lies and statistics, attributed to him, as I'm sure you know, by Mark Twain. The Labour manifesto was absolutely clear about what it intended to do. It said, we will create more good jobs, reform employment support and make work pay so that many more people benefit from the dignity and purpose of work. But the Labour Party, in truth, is not the party of Labour. It's not the party of work. It is the party of unemployment and of welfare. Just look at every Labour government going back to the late 1920s. There's the few months in the early 20s where unemployment doesn't rise, but in every other single Labour government, unemployment is higher at the end of their period than it was at the beginning. And this is because Labour doesn't understand how economic works. It doesn't understand the incentives that people need to want to be in work, to stay in work, or to seek work when they're young. If you look at the unemployment figures, you look at this graph, this is really important because it's going back some years, going back to 2010. You see at the beginning the high levels of unemployment that followed the economic crisis, the 2008 Gordon Brown crisis. It then comes down steadily until the pandemic. But what we're seeing now is we are getting back up above those levels that we had before the pandemic and not seeing that steady decline that Conservative policies helped produce. And it's even worse for youth unemployment. Youth unemployment is back above those levels. And terrible figures that came from Alan Milburn earlier today, pointing out, I think, that 44% of 24-year-olds who've never been in work, who aren't in work or education at the moment, have never had a job. So they face a life of benefits because of failed socialist economic policies. And what are these failures? Costs on business, national insurance on business, high costs of the minimum wage going up and the minimum wage going up for young people. Then you get the Employment Rights Bill, which is a disaster. And it makes employers think they don't want to take people on because if they make a mistake, they can't get rid of them. And if somebody says something in a pub and it's overheard by a member of staff, the pub owner may be liable. This is a terrible way to run an economy because it stops employers taking people on. And all economies have tended to find that growth in employment comes not from large companies, but from small companies. And small companies are the ones who need the greatest flexibility in terms of employment practices. Why? Because they don't have vast HR departments to work them through the problems that are created by complex laws and burdensome regulations. And if you make it harder for them to employ, well, actually, they don't even set up the business in the first place. They think that their good idea won't work because the difficulties in employing are too high. So what should a government be doing? A government should be deregulating employment to make it easier for people to employ. It should be reducing the costs on business. And this isn't just national insurance, it's also the rates bill that is about to go up. They should be stopping the raises on the minimum wage, but they should also make work pay against welfare. One of the great scandals of this government is that when we get to April, benefits will go up in line with inflation, whereas tax thresholds will be frozen. So if you are working, you will be worse off in real terms, whereas if you are on benefits, you will be protected. This is just unfair on people who are working and encourages people to go on welfare as a lifestyle choice. And this has problems because actually being in work is one of the things that drives people, gives them satisfaction, gets them out of the depression, out of the low-level mental health issues that have become the reason for allowing people to be on benefits practically for life. This government, as with all Labour governments, is simply getting it wrong. And the consequence is terrible, especially for the young. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm now joined by the economist, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, and, of course, my pugnacious panel, Kevin Mackenzie and Michael Crick. Justin, thank you for coming in. And
my pleasure.
also an economic archaeologist, so you can take us all the way back in the history of economics. You may be able to say that socialist nostrums have failed since Babylonian times. But it does seem to me that governments don't create jobs. They create the structures where businesses can create jobs.
Well, you said right at the beginning, people understanding business, running business. Our government, I can't see anyone like government who's actually run a business, started a business. Definition of starting a business, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat, wondering if you just not got one. Because you take a big risk. You know, the house could be on the line, family issues and this and that. We've been very good at doing that. Year after year, we've beaten the Germans and the French, setting up more businesses, getting them going. As you said, this is our largest employer. This is actually where we're at our best. And look at, despite what you keep on hearing, the success areas we've got, the tech centres we've got around the country. I can identify at least 40. They're the ones setting up new businesses, good at high-tech areas. And what they're suffering from at the moment is exactly what you just said. People not understanding, what do I need to run the business? Actually allow me to have the flexibility. I've got to be able to raise capital. I've got to be able to employ people. Stop putting the brakes on everything. We've seen in the past few years what works. And we know exactly what doesn't work, and that's exactly what is happening now.
Well, I think one of the worst things that comes from the Treasury is IR35, which discourages people from taking that first step from being employed to being self-employed, eases the path for entrepreneurs, because the desiccated calculating machines in the Treasury seem to think that everybody is only interested in fiddling their taxes, whereas actually an awful lot of people who used to benefit prior to IR35 are the real entrepreneurs who are just getting going.
Yes, and it's this issue we're hearing now creeping in, the sort of this attitude of, that wealth is bad. Increased taxation. No. You don't get any further wealth by increasing taxation. You increase taxation by having greater wealth. Get this the right way round. By all means, we can have more things to try and spend it on once you've actually created the money in the first place. So this is what is so sad, and to me makes me furious, because you were saying about the youngsters, if you don't get into work to start with, it's bloody difficult starting. You need to get that culture right in there, and above all, giving them the incentives to make sure that actually you don't want to fall back on the state. It's not worth it. It's going on paper. Get out there and work, even if the jobs to start with aren't that exciting. Welcome to the real world.
And we've got a benefit system, which means that people are better off on benefits than they are when they first go into employment. And therefore, the incentive not to try is very great.
And other simple things, which doesn't cost the government a great deal. How do you help businesses like that? We've got the Enterprise Investment Scheme, which the government only has to pay out a proportion of it when businesses go wrong. Now, some will, but actually others won't. The government is just doing it by way of guarantees. It's a simple thing that can be done. It's not focused just on the southeast, but all over the country. You can focus into different regions if you like, and certainly on the high-tech areas. And so without costing a great deal of money, but again, changing that to get that vital word going, confidence. Just the confidence of knowing we're still setting up new businesses despite this lot at the moment. We are still seeing some successes coming through, and at the very least have a government to actually understand, yes, this is wrong, here are the good bits, and this is what we've got to do to try and improve it.
There was one very interesting argument that Lord O'Neill hinted at when he was on Radio 4 last week. He said making employment more difficult is not necessarily a terrible thing, because it will encourage companies to invest more in automation, and that therefore they may squeeze employment in the short term. In the longer term, you get the productivity gap that we've suffered from improved. This seems to me not a great way to run your economy, that actually you want to make both employment and investment easy, rather than thinking that the way to get more investment is by putting people out of work.
No, get as many people as you can participating in it. No, it's the speed of money through the economy. You want people earning it and spending it. And that's why it's at the lower end of the market. That's where you've actually got to get more people in the position where they are going to be earning and spending, even if it's relatively small amounts. As soon as you actually start putting brakes on the system, then actually that's when you see the tax take starts falling down, and it ripples through really very quickly indeed.
I just want to bring you in, Michael, because there does seem to me to be a paradox about employment rights, that they are brought in with the best of intentions to protect employees, but actually they stop employment being created, and therefore they end up being counterproductive.
Well, there's some truth in what you say. Let me go back to your monologue, if you don't mind. I mean, anybody would think that unemployment, Conservative governments had never seen it. It was the unemployment of the Conservative governments of the 20s and 30s, interrupted by brief periods of Labour and the national governments which were essentially Conservative, which actually haunted Edward Heath for the rest of his life. I'm writing a book about him right now. And then, of course, when he was Prime Minister, unemployment hit 1 million, and everybody was utterly horrified. I mean, you cannot, if you weren't alive at the time, you can't really imagine the horror that happened. And then under Margaret Thatcher, your great hero, it went up to 3 million. And for the first time, and people were even more horrified. So let's pretend that unemployment if you
want to talk about the 1930s, you're making the very common mistake of assuming our experience is the American experience. Our unemployment peaks in 1931, then starts coming down steadily. Actually, of all people, thanks to Chamberlain, who was a very successful Chancellor of the Exchequer, and restructures, to Justin's point, public expenditure and gets that under control.
Yeah, but nonetheless, you're in a much less isolated economy in the 90s. Sorry, much more isolated economy in the 20s and 30s.
Well, not quite. Not quite.
And many people on the left of your party were deeply horrified and ashamed of what had happened under your party. So let's not pretend, as your monologue did, that it's purely about Labour. Look, listening to Justin, listening to you, going on about being entrepreneurial and the enthusiasm with which you go, and you're talking about getting the money through the economy. I believe in that. I really do. I tried to run a business myself once. I was no good at it, and it went out of business. But I've often said actually that I think young people today, perhaps if they've got some good ideas, they should think of going into business rather than going to a higher education. So my views on this are not simple.
All right. I want to bring Kelvin in because, Kelvin, you are the one real entrepreneur on this panel. You've set up a number of businesses and really got your hands dirty.
Are they doing all right?
Well, some of them have done well, but I'm afraid this is the joy of being an entrepreneur. It is that. Yeah. And you've got to hope that you get out at that and not at that. It's painful. It's painful. And that 3 o'clock in the morning feeling is an absolute shocker. An absolute shocker. However, I agree with you. I think if I am a youngster today, I would be hoping to set out, actually, I think there's more security on setting out on your own than there will be for the big company who suddenly say, I'm very sorry, have you seen this tech? I've loved working with you, but it's going to go. The tap on the shoulder will be coming very regularly. The people I feel sorry for right now, and I'm sure that Labour will come and try and do the good thing here. But what I suspect they will try and do is try and come up with kind of job coaches to try and encourage some dim job coach trying to encourage some rather dim chap right into a job which he or she's not capable of doing. The truth about the matter is, with 16% unemployment, and all of us who know, anybody who's bumping into anybody who is employing people right now, it's a very curious moment in my life where most people I know are wanting to lay people off or not hire people. Yeah. They feel very uneasy. And the people it's going to affect are the young. And people who've gone graduates, members of my family, right? They're graduates. They are struggling to find anybody returning their emails.
All right. I'm not going to allow you to come in, Michael, because we've got to move on, I'm afraid, because coming up in just a moment.
Time has come to broaden the party, to put in place people in shadow positions.
Mr. Kinnock paraded his shadow cabinet like a cup-winning football team.
Is Nigel Farage on the path to power, or is he having his Neil Kinnock moment? Today, the Reform leader announced his so-called shadow cabinet. But is he making Lord Kinnock's mistake, announcing the government before winning an election?
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So, Steve, talk to me about the book.
It's the sense that everything that progressives see is through the prism of the omnicourse, basically. Advertising has been trying to educate its audience now for the past 10 years on the omnicourse, which is climate crisis, LGBTQ rights, race relations, but exclusively almost through Black Lives Matters. trans rights, female rights, migration, asylum seekers' rights. So we've been trying to educate our audience on those subjects now for the past 10, 15 years, instead of doing what we should be doing, and that is selling products and building brands.
Well, when I was working, you had an advertising team and you had a sponsorship team.
Right.
Somewhere in this timeline, these two have kind of become one, and the advertiser now seems to have the same power that a sponsor has.
I think that's kind of ended. I think that during the time of peak purpose, advertising agencies could exercise that discretion. Peak purpose happened between 2010 and 2021, when advertisers and their marketing and their client marketing directors were almost given free rein to do whatever they damn well pleased. And that was because on the client side, the Procter & Gamble's, the Unilevers, they were living through a period of free money. Free money meant that you didn't have to actually make a profit through organic growth. You could get the money from the banks. And so the whole social purpose thing, the whole idea that, well, we don't want to work on that particular brand because it isn't socially acceptable to us. It hasn't got a purpose. It isn't having a social impact. Those days ended. Quite simply, it was economics. It was economics.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nigel Farage has added more paving onto his road to number 10 today as he announces his shadow cabinet.
Time for the party to take the next step. Too often, the criticism over the last 20 months has been that we're a one-man band. But the time has come to broaden the party, to put in place people in shadow positions, and that process begins today.
Well, if they are the one-man band, we certainly know who the organ grinder is. But the recent defectors, Robert Jenrick, Stella Braverman, became Shadow Chancellor and Shadow Education Secretary. Lee Anderson stays as Chief Whip. Deputy Leader Richard Tice would lead a newly conceived Business, Trade and Energy Department whilst being Deputy Prime Minister, while Reform's Head of Policy, Zay Yousaf, would take on the role of Shadow Home Secretary. The announcement has been met with mixed reviews. Here's GB News' very own Christopher Hope asking Mr Farage a crucial question.
I know Defence Secretary. I know
I can't win, really, can I?
Well, no, but these are the most important issues facing this country.
OK, I can't win. This time yesterday, we're a one-man band. I mean, now you want a bus full. I mean, what can I do?
So where is the Foreign Secretary? Why is the Shadow Home Secretary not a Member of Parliament? Is this a vanity project for disaffected and failed Tories? And is Nigel Farage having his Neil Kinnock moment?
Neil Kinnock descended on Sheffield by helicopter tonight. This was not the Republican Party of America, but the Labour Party of Great Britain.
We're all right!
Labour officials believe they're in the driving seat. And tonight, Mr Kinnock paraded his shadow cabinet like a cup-winning football team.
So do we think that Nigel Farage is all right, 2 words, not one, or not? Well, let me go to my panel. Michael, is this a Neil Kinnock moment? Is this hubris when they're head in the polls and thinking that they're going to be the next government? And do voters like this, or do they think that it's going a bit too far?
Well, I think it is useful for Farage to set out his team and who might be ministers in the next in government if he came to power. But there's only 5 others apart from him. It's a 6-man band at the moment. Well, 5-man and 1-woman band. And as Christopher Hope pointed out, no Foreign Secretary, no defence, the two of the huge issues of our time. He should have set out all 20 or 24, as generally there are in a cabinet or shadow. Actually, a cabinet's got even more these days. Everybody's in the cabinet. But more, I mean, basically, it was to deal with the squabbling, wasn't it? It was to establish that Jenrick is in charge of economic policy rather than Richard Tice. It was to establish that Zia Youssef was in charge of home affairs rather than Suella Braverman. That was what it was about, internal rivalries. They all went to private schools, they're all wealthy, and most of them are men. They need to do a bit about that.
Do they? Does this sort of stuff matter, or if they're good people?
Right, okay.
Isn't that what we're more concerned about?
So I don't agree with it right now. And the reason I don't agree with it, I think the reason that he is hugely successful reform is because it is a one-man band. And it's just very easy. In fact, all politics now comes down to the leader. I mean, Starmer proves himself not to be a leader, and everyone is shouting and hollering. But the Labour Party is so short of anybody any good that they can't find anybody to take his place. Anyway, taking the other point about them all wealthy and private schools, well, we've had a look at the Skint because he's very proud about this being the most working class cabinet in history. Well, look at the state of the country and look at the state of his blinking cabinet. We don't want any more of the Skint and the dim. What we want is let's have a look at the private and the wealthy. I'm in favour of them. So on my other point about on the Foreign Secretary thing, I don't know whether you saw that the Times indicated this morning that, in fact, it was going to go to Sahawi, right, and that he was going to be wheeled out. That would have been a 101% disaster because that would have been the whole point of this. After all, he's a tax fiddler that makes Rayner look like she's just sweeping the roads.
And I said to Farage outside this studio about when Zahawi joined Reform that he was an accident waiting to happen. I wonder whether somebody tapped on Farage's shoulder this morning and made the same point.
Correct.
Because it is a bit odd not to have a shadow foreign secretary there. But on the point about one-man band, the trouble with you can't Farage. Well, actually, I don't think Farage wants to be Prime Minister, and that is becoming a pretty wide opinion.
No.
Yes, there are.
Why do you say that?
Because he wants to win an election. He loves the limelight, but he's terrified by the job and all the responsibilities, all the decisions.
Come on,
and how blooming difficult it is to be Prime Minister these days.
I don't agree. I think he'd love to do it. I think he wants the challenge.
For about 5 minutes, he'd love to do it.
I think he sees the country. Look, I don't belong to his party and I'm not joining. But I think Nigel is a genuinely patriotic man who sees this country being driven into the ground and wants to make it better, even at the expense of an incredibly hard-working, tiring schedule.
But the councils that Reform now run, and by the way, this decision yesterday will give us an opportunity to see even more how Reform is hopeless at running anything. This show how difficult it is to run anything these days.
The councils have all gone native, haven't they?
How do you mean?
Well, they're putting up taxes, they're putting up the council tax.
It's not too bad. A friend of mine does the finance side of Lincolnshire County Council, and he was very proudly texted me the other day saying they've just announced that it's going to rise by 2.5%, which is beneath inflation, and actually half of the problem that Kent faces, which is, yes, you're right, but Kent has massive problems, often caused by people coming from other parts of the world.
The problems aren't just financial, are they? There's all these councillors that have resigned. In nearly all of the councils, in fact, people who resigned who have been driven out because things have been found out about their
I'll make you one bet now. That lineup is not the lineup of those 5 jobs in 3 years' time. Politics is about this, and that will lead to exits.
And three or four of those 6 are accidents waiting to happen. Along with
so my bet is that Tice becomes Chancellor in the end. By the day it happens. He's a clever guy who understands finance.
I think Tice's appointment is a really good one, actually, appointing him to a big economic ministry, energy and business. Therefore, the 2 real problems the country faces, and Tice, highly intelligent man.
He's got housing as well. It's ridiculous. It's pointed out he's got more jobs than John Prescott had. He's got, but trade, industry, energy and housing. In fact, you better be careful in case the acronym says something rude, which it often does in these cases.
Back to sort of Harold Wilson-esque super ministries?
Yeah.
And could you have a smaller cabinet with 5 or 6 people running super ministries? I know it was tried before and didn't work. Is that something that maybe underlying this?
Maybe. I mean, the real problem is he hasn't got enough MPs yet, and he hasn't got anybody in the Lords apart from one or two defectors.
But Michael,
and the government should have allowed him to appoint something.
Michael, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the Tory party over the next 3 years? Loads of them will be coming over. I mean, the biggest issue he faces is that the charge against him or against reform is it's Tories 2.0, and you have to fight that. So I would urge him not to accept, unless there's going to be dramatic changes like Jacob, for instance, I would urge him not to accept any more Tories and actually create his own stars. Create your own stars. There are good people out there.
But he doesn't like that. He doesn't like creating stars, does Farage, because then they become rivals. And a lot of that happened in UK. Actually, what's remarkable about Tice is how Tice and Farage have survived so long together. Yeah. I can't think of two people, Farage and another, that have lasted that long.
He's a clever guy.
But, of course, the other point about these six is I think 5 of them are ex-Conservatives, including Farage himself. Yeah. And Channel 4 News tonight have made a film based on something in my book about him, about how Farage tried to become a Conservative MP in a safe seat, Tunbridge Wells, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
so
that was 20 years ago. Lots have changed.
Well, nonetheless, it just shows that they're all ex-Tories at heart, and you're in the queue as well, I imagine.
I'm not in any queue, no.
Actually, you've got this 7th
It will be an
interesting
interesting test for Jacob when North Somerset comes
up.
out.
Well, we'll be careful about that. But what I do want to go back to is the Kinnock thing.
Yeah.
Because you were there. I mean, it was the somewhat won it. And Kinnock got hubristic, and the electorate didn't like it. I just wonder whether this is taking the electorate for granted.
That's exaggerated, because actually that wasn't on the news that night, that rally. It was only the next day that it sort of seeped out. By then, most people had decided how they were going to vote. I think the Sheffield rally, it makes you cringe just listening to it.
Just listening to it.
But, and I'm sure it makes Kinnock cringe even more. But I think the effect of that is exaggerated. I mean, it's amusing to have as a piece of history, which you maybe do or don't like, depending on what it's about.
I was canvassing the night of the Sheffield rally in Westminster, and a lady called out to me. She said, "It's absolutely terrible. Neil Kinnock's had a rally with 20 million people." And I thought, oh my goodness, it was rather more popular than I had thought. Anyway, thank you very much, my brilliant panel, and I'm sorry we didn't have a Reform spokesman who we were hoping to have for that segment. Anyway, in a moment, we've got this.
From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Goldman Sachs is reportedly ending its diversity policies for appointments to its board. Is this a sign that President Trump's agenda is forcing companies back into common sense, or are they realising that appointing on anything other than merit is nonsensical and counterproductive?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, if you're heading away for half term, it's a little bit drier across the Mediterranean than it has been lately. Further wet weather, though, affecting more northwestern areas of Europe. The Canary Islands seeing the best, the warmest and the driest weather across Europe. Some wet weather pushing into France and Spain. Drier than it has been across parts of Italy and Greece, and that theme does continue in towards the end of the week and into the weekend as well. But once again, Tenerife seeing highs of 24 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A mixed 24 hours ahead, cold and dry for many of us at first, but then an area of rain moves in, and as it bumps into the cold air, there will be snow for some, but it's going to be a messy mixture of rain, sleet and patchy snow for many parts of southern and central UK. Here's the front moving in, bumping into the cold air. It stays dry for Scotland, for many central and eastern parts of England overnight. Increasing cloud, but a frost in places nevertheless, so a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, with temperatures below freezing in places. Meanwhile, we've got milder air returning to the west and southwest, and these outbreaks of rain. A few flakes of snow over Dartmoor and Exmoor, but mostly this is rain affecting parts of Northern Ireland into the west and south of Wales, southwest England. Now, the rain eases off through the morning, so actually it turns drier for a time. A brisk southeasterly wind will make it feel cold, and we've got some snow falling over the higher parts of Northern Ireland, but rain at lower levels. Now, for Scotland, plenty of breaks in the cloud, particularly towards the north, although some showers will affect parts of Shetland. And it's hazy sunshine, I think, for many parts of central and eastern England. Some cloud breaks coming along, a few glimmers of sunshine. The front in the south and west, though, is slow moving, so damp day to come for Northern Ireland, for much of Wales, the south and southwest. And then later in the day, the rain turns heavy across southern counties, with the risk of localised flooding and issues on the roads. But we're beginning at this stage to see some snow over higher parts of Wales, and overnight into the start of Thursday could be some disruption due to snow across parts of Wales and the Midlands, mostly over hills, but some patchy snow at lower levels. However, on Thursday, all of that clears through. A brighter day follows eventually before more rain spills in from the northwest later. Then it turns much milder heading into the weekend, highs of 14 Celsius.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the Mailmogs have certainly come in their droves because you're all interested in Reform's top team. Jane says, great team, nothing wrong in taking genuine talent so long as they're all singing from the centre-right hymn sheet. These Tories were centre-right. Most Tories were left-leaning Liberals. Not me. I'm 100% certain they are far and away better than the current Labour Shah. Well, I agree with that too. Kevin, Reform's shadow cabinet already has far more intellect and business experience than the shambles that is Labour. Agree with that. Brian, the people who helped break Britain is the one who's going to fix it. Sure, Reform is just a party of Tory has-beens. Sorry, says Brian. Nick, they have one policy, immigration. What about everything else? Will be completely destroyed if they get in. Oh dear. Not sure about it. Anyway, let's move on, because are we finally seeing the death of DEI? The Wall Street bank Goldman Sachs is reportedly removing its guidance on race, sexuality and gender identity for appointing its directors later this year. Despite previously declaring DEI a top priority, its chief executive officer, David Solomon, has now retreated on diversity requirements, claiming the agenda had served its purpose. However, upon taking office in 2025, President Trump criticised DEI culture. So is this a corporation realising that appointing on anything other than merit is absurd, or is the company capitulating to President Trump's pressure? Let me go to my panel. Kelvin, I have an admiration for Goldman Sachs as a business. They have their finger on the pulse. Mm-hmm. I was really pleased that they were one of the first major companies to tell people to get back to work in the office, slightly after me, but nonetheless. They know where business and politics is going, and their moving away from DEI is really important, isn't it?
Well, it's part of a trend in the United States to do what the President of the United States wants you to do. Let's be honest about it. So if he were to say, I think the DEI should be increased, he would be announcing that. So much, it is literally astonishing how commercial and media life in the United States bends at the will of a strong president. And there hasn't been one like Trump in my lifetime. And so at the moment, I think he's playing politics. I think there's obviously some big government deals out there. He wants those deals, and if he wants to be on that list, he has to say this kind of stuff. Now, the truth about the matter is that most companies are reasonable when it comes to hiring. There aren't enough good people out there. Nobody gives a damn. Somebody's standing in front of you who's got something to offer. Honestly, please come on down. And so I think that in 3 or 4 years' time, when Trump is no longer in office, he'll be saying completely the opposite.
But I think Kelvin says something really important, that actually as an employer, you want to get the best people. And that DEI has been a weight on that. It's been unfair on the people who've been selected because everyone says, well, you're a DEI hire. It downgrades good quality people. But it creates a feeling of unfairness amongst people who don't get DEI weightings.
Well, there's some truth in that. And I think that a lot of the DEI that I've been aware of in my background in broadcasting and also in higher education as a university governor, is it stresses certain things like gender and ethnic characteristics, although they're never broken down properly, and it ignores things like class. And I think class actually is. I know I sound like a Marxist here, but the figures for class in some of our institutions, and a lot of this explains the rise of Brexit and reform and everything like that. And when Kelvin was editing The Sun, and if he'd come into the office every day and saw that all his staff were middle-class men, I'm sure he would have said, well, we need a few women around here. We need a few people from working. We need people who reflect our readership. We need more black people. We need Now, you may not do it in the way of quotas and all of that, but a good employer, conscious of customers out there, and conscious of that talents come from all sorts of places, will bear this sort of thing in mind.
I think one of the issues that we face, actually, slightly away from this, though, is where universities are in all this. I saw a stat this morning that 1%, 100 years ago, 1% went to university, 1950, 3%, and we now have 50% going to university. That looks as though that's a disaster. Do you remember? You used to hire people on the basis that they'd been to university. Now, I suspect, right now, the reverse may well be true. Somebody will have left at 18, they make the application, and because actually the university no longer delivers what you want as an employer.
University is a very good example of this, in that the group that goes least to university these days is white working class men, and that is and yet that barely comes up. And I've been in these discussions, and I have to raise it. I say, what about white working? And they all think I'm a UKIP supporter or a Reform supporter, but that is crucial.
But you're absolutely right to raise it. It's really annoying when companies, organisations like MI5, MI6 and the Bank of England have DEI initiatives to give special internships to people of a particular ethnic background and ignore, and I felt this very strongly when I was the MP of North East Somerset, ignore some of my constituents, as were, who were some of the least well-off people in the country. And they don't have a chance, and you're quite right, they don't get any looking, nobody cares about them, and yet they surely deserve the helping hand, having been failed sometimes by the education system.
I suspect that DEI actually applies a lot more in state-run businesses. I imagine that the National Health Service would be a huge example of trying constantly to balance out percentages, not balance out on the basis of whether you're any good or not.
Actually, I think the National Health Service probably fills its quotas already and doesn't need to worry about a lot of that. So the conventional quotas, but what I'm talking about is the unconventional ones that are ignored, and which is part, I think, of our crucial to our understanding our current politics.
All right, thank you to my panel. I'm sorry to say that neither Mr. Goldman nor Mr. Sachs were available for comment when we asked them. In a moment, is 56, my age, too old for fashion? I was too old for fashion when I was 5, let alone 56. According to a new survey, it might be.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh, no, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Is 56 too old for fashion? A new survey shows many think it is, with some claiming the over 40s should stop trying to keep up with trends. But some stars are calling out ageism and others urging the public to challenge stereotypes about age. Well, I'm joined now by the timeless and ageless TV personality and socialite, Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, you are hotfoot from the Dracula premiere.
I am, indeed, from the Noel Coward Theatre, and it was absolutely fabulous. But I have to say, everyone was asking what I was wearing.
And you are the model of fashion.
Well, I love fashion, and I really don't like the 20-somethings telling me what to wear. I mean, when I was in my 30s, had young children, everyone was saying I have to dress much more conservatively. And then when I was in my 40s, they were saying I have to cut my hair and not wear a bikini. And I haven't done any of those things.
Right, well, nobody will believe you're in your 40s, so I'm sure you don't
50s, darling,
believe that for a moment. But I think if you're me, and I am 56, I've never been fashionable. I've never tried to be. I've never wanted to. Perhaps the romper suits Nanny put me in when I was a baby were the height of romper suit fashion. But it's a male-female thing, isn't it? Broadly, women are fashionable and men tend not to be.
Well, I think you're actually very fashionable. I think you could be our next James Bond. I've always said that.
Well, then you'd have to come back.
I will come back. I would love to do that. But I think as you grow older, you have more experience and know what suits you. Like, you know the suit, you know, what you're wearing is really good for you, as I know what now suits me. So I think as you grow older, you've got more experience. Whereas when you're younger, you go through trends, you know, they come in and out. Whereas when you're older, like my age, you know what's good for you.
And so do you find as you get older that you're no longer influenced by what the fashion pages say? You wear what you think is right. You're more self-determining rather than influenced by trends.
Yeah, 100%, Jacob. I wear what I feel good in, feel confident in. I've been around long enough to know what suits me and doesn't suit me. But I do look up to some people. I mean, look at, you've got J-Lo, who's the we the same age, Jacob. And many of those we admire.
Perpetually youthful Joan Collins,
well,
who always looks absolutely amazing.
Well, exactly, and these are real greats. And I think the younger generation could, learn a lot. They're classic. They know what they want, know what looks good. But I think a lot of tonight, a lot of them were asking what I was wearing instead of the other way round.
Well, what you're wearing is magnificent. So what are you wearing? Explain to my viewers what you're wearing.
I've actually a little number, because it was a Dracula-themed show. I came for a very big collar, and it was designed by a guy called Eric Way, who's a dear friend of mine, and I put a bit of velvet as well. I love velvet. I like clothes. I'm a Taurian, and they like softness.
And it does have an air of the Hammer House of Horror Dracula stories, doesn't it? That you've got that sort of elegance, and they were always beautifully done and had people dressed properly.
That's it, and I loved Hammer House of Horror. I used to watch it growing up, and I just think as you grow older, you know what you like, you know style, you know the classics, whereas the younger don't know. I think they should take a bit of inspiration from the midlife crisis.
And you took the trouble to dress up for a premiere. Do other people do that anymore? Because some things you go to nowadays, people used to dress up for, they seem to shuffle in like old tramps.
Yeah, and I really get upset with that. I mean, I go to many premieres, and some of them are just wearing hoodies and jeans, and I think it's a special occasion. I think it's really important to dress up, and it shows your personality, what you're about, and I think it's really, really, like a special occasion, Jacob. You wouldn't be wearing jeans, and I hear you've never worn a pair of jeans.
I wouldn't be wearing jeans even for a very unspecial occasion. No, I'd probably be wearing a double-breasted suit under all circumstances, because then that's easy. You don't have to think about it.
Well, that's it. But, I mean, I'm quite surprised you've never worn a pair of jeans, because I think you could really look amazing in some. I really do. But I do think for a premiere like tonight, I think people should dress up. And I think it's really sad that we're seeing people looking all grungy with hoodies.
Yeah, we don't like that.
No, I don't. And their shirts untucked. That's not for me.
They shouldn't be let in. Anyway, thank you very much. I may come back to you in a moment, because today is Shrove Tuesday, and I'll be going home after this programme to have pancakes for my supper. Well, across the country, people have been flipping pancakes, squeezing lemons and piling on the syrup to mark the day before Lent begins. GB News has been in Scarborough, where the locals observe an age-old tradition of skipping at the beach whilst having pancake races and bell ringing by the town crier. So it is the day before Lent, and the day before Lent, everybody has to think of what they're giving up. So, what are you giving up for Lent?
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm giving up champagne, I'm not drinking any alcohol, and I'm going to do it this time.
Excellent. Well, I'm doing the same as you. I'm also giving up booze for Lent. I once gave up coffee. It was a great mistake. I was grumpy for the whole of Lent. Anyway, that's all from me, and it's the perpetually ungrumpy Patrick Christie is coming up next. Patrick, are you giving up anything for Lent?
Well, I just get to say alcohol now all the time, don't I? So fantastic, I'm going to do that. Great show, Jacob, fantastic. Loads on this evening. I mean, the Chagossians have absolutely humiliated Sir Keir Starmer, haven't they? They have actually returned to Chagos. Is he going to boot them off? I very much doubt it. Also, yes, breaking news. We believe that we have kept a jihadi in prison. So we have had a real-world impact here. There was a man who was convicted of being an Islamist terrorist who was about to be freed. We raised it, and we think that the parole board have actually changed their mind. So we're going to talk about that and loads more, as well as all of your newspaper front pages as well for the next day. So stay tuned.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A mixed 24 hours ahead, cold and dry for many of us at first, but then an area of rain moves in, and as it bumps into the cold air, there will be snow for some, but it's going to be a messy mixture of rain, sleet and patchy snow for many parts of southern and central UK. Here's the front moving in, bumping into the cold air. It stays dry for Scotland, for many central and eastern parts of England overnight. Increasing cloud, but a frost in places nevertheless, so a chilly start to the day on Wednesday, with temperatures below freezing in places. Meanwhile, we've got milder air returning to the west and southwest, and these outbreaks of rain. A few flakes of snow over Dartmoor and Exmoor, but mostly this is rain affecting parts of Northern Ireland into the west and south of Wales, southwest England. Now, the rain eases off through the morning, so actually it turns drier for a time. A brisk southeasterly wind will make it feel cold, and we've got some snow falling over the higher parts of Northern Ireland, but rain at lower levels. Now, for Scotland, plenty of breaks in the cloud, particularly towards the north, although some showers will affect parts of Shetland. And it's hazy sunshine, I think, for many parts of central and eastern England. Some cloud breaks coming along, a few glimmers of sunshine. The front in the south and west, though, is slow moving, so damp